And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Hello, I'm National Weather Service Meteorologist Peter Chan with your Alaska Aviation Weather Outlook on this Saturday, February 1st, 2025. And to set things up, the pattern has shifted out. We had a big storm impact a good portion of the state last weekend. And now we're watching high pressure, Arctic high pressure building over the Yukon, Northwest Territories, northern British Columbia. This high will get up around 1055 millibars later this weekend into early next week. Meanwhile, there's a warmer high that'll be sitting down here in the North Pacific with some ridging coming up into the southwest, and then further west is the storm track. We've already had the lead low pressure with a front push up through the Bering Strait and impacting now the northwest interior as of this Saturday, and then there'll be another stronger low come up through the western Bering and then up along eastern Russia as we go through Monday into early Tuesday, and that'll be the next system of consequence out that way. But otherwise, much of the interior is going to enjoy quieter weather. Now, along the coast, we still have some light snow, blowing snow occurring in areas, and Sunday morning we could still find some IFR conditions around Bristol Bay, west side of the Alaska Range in the southwest, as well as the lower Yukon, and up through the Seward Peninsula and along areas of the Chukchi Sea coast up through around Cape Lisburne. And then as we go into Sunday, we continue to see those IFR conditions along coastal areas of the west, northwest, and Beaufort Sea. Some of this also IFR conditions as a result of stronger wind gusts and blowing snow. And then as we look to the east here, cold. We have cold outflow winds here throughout the northeastern Gulf Coast and in through the Panhandle, thanks to that big high pressure that just is going to anchor itself for much of the upcoming week right over northwest Canada. And as I said, the storm track will be way out here, coming out of the North Pacific into the Bering and up along the eastern Russian coastline. For Monday morning, we see similar setup. VFR conditions, cold, still those outflow breezes across the southeast interior. We have VFR conditions. There could be locally some issues with the strong inversion, temperature inversion that sets up in this kind of thing, because with that warmer ridge down here to the south, that is providing a little warmer air aloft eventually as it lifts northward here over the course of the late weekend and early next week. So there could be some areas where the inversions do create some lower stratus or ice fog. And then to the west, more importantly, we have another frontal system approaching out through the eastern Bering up to St. Lawrence there with IFR conditions expected Monday morning. And then by Monday afternoon, the next frontal system, as the low takes a track up like this, front out ahead of it will pull the chance of more precipitation, mainly initially snow with some wind here along areas of the west coast, Bering Strait, Nome down to the lower Yukon Delta, Nunavik Island, St. Matthew, St. Paul, into the eastern Aleutians. So past conditions on Sunday are looking VFR becoming MVFR at Anatuvik Pass. Same thing, Adigan Pass, VFR becoming MVFR. Lake Clark and Merrill, generally MVFR becoming VFR, but on the west side of the Alaska Range, as you travel west of these passes, there will be IFR conditions. Rainy Pass, MVFR becoming VFR. Windy Pass should generally be able to be VFR here on Sunday. And as we go east, Isabel Pass starting with some MVFR conditions becoming VFR. Same thing, Metasta Pass, MVFR becoming VFR. And then finally, Tanita Pass, VFR, though again, that temperature inversion will be in place over the Copper River Basin. And for Portage, VFR conditions are expected. And then, of course, here through the Panhandle, we still have some cold drainage coming through those passes. There could be some colder temperatures, gusty winds, VFR conditions expected during the day on Sunday. So looking at freezing levels at the surface, finding milder air, trying to come back northeastward up here through the central into the northern Bering. We have temperatures near freezing right along southwest coast and then up here along the western Gulf. But with that colder offshore outflow winds, we found the freezing line push out over well past the eastern Gulf, south of Haida Gwaii. That's why we have cold temperatures with cold outflow winds, high pressure that is building in this region. And with the storm track to the west, that's where we find the active fronts. So we do have some pockets of moderate potential for some moderate icing, generally above 6,000 feet, between the central eastern Aleutians and then up west of St. Lawrence, and then also areas of the Chukchi Sea, especially north of the Seward Peninsula and say offshore there of Point Hope, and that would be generally where you do have some precipitation bearing clouds above 4,000 feet. The upper level wind field, so interestingly enough, we have the cold surface high pressure here, the Arctic high pressure. We have the warmer mid and upper level ridge with a warmer surface high down here in the North Pacific, and then we have southwesterly flow here up through the western Bering along eastern Russia. This is a higher amplitude pattern with this ridging, so we find the cold air here over the mainland into the southeast. We have milder air trying to return up into the Bering from the North Pacific. Strongest winds, here indication mid-levels, 700 millibars, 9,000 feet. Northerly flow over northwest Canada, then northeasterly off the Panhandle into the eastern Gulf, North Pacific. Back here to the west, a broad area of mid-level winds, 50 to as high as 70, 75 knots out over the Bering, signaling that return flow, that southerly return flow, bringing in the milder air. And then at the surface, for Sunday, we have area of low pressure out here along the western Bering, and ahead of it, south-southwest flow, 50 to 65 knots. We also have another stream along an old frontal boundary here of about 45 to 55 knots from the eastern Aleutians up to near St. Matthew, and then up into the far eastern Russia toward the Bering Strait. And otherwise, not much in the way of wind here out over the southern central portions of the mainland. Perfect conditions for that strong low-level temperature inversion to set up and stay that way. So turbulence on Sunday, there will be the threat of moderate turbulence, surface to 5,000 feet over a large area of the Panhandle. That's simply those offshore outflow winds because of the cold building high here in northwest Canada. Meanwhile, on the backside of the upper ridge, we have southerly flow returning across areas of the Aleutians all the way up through the Bering Strait, Chukchi Sea. So we do expect there could be moderate turbulence along areas of the Lisburn Peninsula, western Brooks Range, western Seward Peninsula, St. Lawrence, down through parts of the southwest lower Yukon region, Nunavik Island, St. Matthew down to St. Paul, and then extending out along the Aleutians, we expect, and the lower Alaska Peninsula, there is the potential for widespread moderate turbulence on Sunday, surface to 3,000 feet.